Hey everyone, welcome to my 10K subscriber special video. This video will be a commentated showcase of all my best or most memorable scores that I've hit in my aiming career. To preface this video, I want to remind all of you that every score I upload to my channel, I do so in the hopes that you guys, the aiming community, will watch, learn, and be motivated by my VODs to grind just as I have. None of these scores would have been possible without your support, so thank you. Thank you so much for everything. So without further ado, let's get into the aim training runs that defined my career. So Reflex Flick 100% was actually the first world record that I got in aim training. And Reflex Flick as a scenario was the first scenario that I uploaded to my YouTube channel. And initially it was the first indication that, you know, I had something special going for me in aim training. And it was the first hint to me that I was really good at this. I had no idea what was coming for me in the future, and this was so early in my career that I was just training for basic Overwatch skills. I didn't really have any clue what was going to happen. I don't really play Reflex Flick anymore because it's a pretty intense scenario due to these like intense flick motions. But I do recommend it to people who are trying to learn static and implement the Bardoz method. Popcornvoltaic 470 was the first Astro score that I got in the Voltaic benchmarks back in Season 3. And it was my first Voltaic world record. Such a groundbreaking achievement looking back at it. This score was the first one that I really had to work hard for, and it was the moment that set in motion all of the work that would come in future Voltaic benchmarks and the long grind that would extend out now to about 3 years. This score, Kinesvoltaic 92.6, is actually an insane run by me. Even though it wasn't world record, I was still keeping up with Yams at his peak. This score marked the end of a very long grind in December of 2021 to get Voltaic Celestial. It was the first time I hit Voltaic Celestial, and it was really such a fulfilling and satisfying achievement to finally get to the top of a leaderboard that I've been paying attention to for the past like several months up to that point. This score, Popcornvoltaic 530. This one has so much history to it. It's actually the VOD that I gave to Cine when he asked for the best VOD that I could provide from aim training that would showcase my skills when I joined Voltaic all the way back in 2022. I was so proud of breaking the 500 barrier, being the first to break the 500 barrier. A few months before this, it felt absolutely impossible, and I was grinding so hard just to prove to everyone that what's impossible, or what we see as impossible in aim training, is 100% possible, and there's really no barrier that low that can't be broken. So this is OG Passu, and it's one of the first scores, I think it is the first score that I hit once I got my new PC set up. And before the new PC, I was on a pretty trash setup with Kovacs running at a maximum of like 200 FPS, maybe more on a few simpler scenarios like static or tracking. It was really the first realization of how much I was getting handicapped by my setup. Having good peripherals in aim training is definitely important, and you can get to the top, obviously, even if you have bad peripherals, but it's still a big difference for me when I switched to 240 FPS, 240 Hz monitor, and hitting scores like this, it obviously shows. Getting my new PC was actually around the time that I was beginning to transition fully to professional aim training. I had already joined Voltaic. I was attending their streams, trying to do VOD review streams for the community. And this was really the pivot point where I decided that I didn't really want to focus on Overwatch anymore, and aim training was the main thing. So this score, when I hit VT Precise Orb Advance Celestial over Azabun, the current Popcorn Go to Tracking Invincible player, this score was just surprising to me. Like, this was something that I was working towards for a very, very long time. PGTI is actually one of my favorite scenarios, Kovacs. And getting world record on this so early in the Season 4 benchmarks lifespan, it was pretty surreal. So those who know me best know that I was inspired by the former dynamic clicking legend, Fusa, to become the best and get to the top at the dynamic clicking leaderboards, especially Passu. Passu small reload was one of Fusa's best scenarios, with 127 gapping at like 5 or 6 points ahead of second place. And I wanted to take that further, and I was the first to cross the 130 barrier here, which I'm actually really proud of. From this point on, I was really focused on getting better at Passu and really honing my skills on this scenario type, because I thought it was probably the most valuable scenario in all of Kovacs, because there's so many things that you can get out of Passu type movements. Lots of different variants, lots of different categories that Passu can be turned into and still be valuable. Definitely the best scenario type in Kovacs. So this was August of 2022, and this was around the time when I decided that it was time to transition into AIM Labs and try for a good rank on the Voltaic benchmarks Season 2 for AIM Labs. It was around this point that I set my goal as Celestial Complete, but quickly I realized that it wasn't really time for me to hit that yet. And Angle Shot was the first gate that I really needed to pass in order for me to realize Celestial and its possibility. So after that, I mean, I set my goal back to Astra Complete, which was a little bit more realistic, and I was eventually able to complete that, and this score here is the beginning of that run. Astra Complete was definitely like a big achievement for me. Obviously, Yams had already done it in Kovacs and Voltaic Season 3, but here I am doing it in AIM Lab, and this score set in motion all that I would be doing in AIM Lab, especially the future Reflex Season 2 benchmarks, and just overall a lot of work in AIM Labs. And obviously, yeah, here it is. Skyswitch Advance was the last score that I needed to complete Celestial in AIM Labs. I wasn't Celestial Complete yet, but this was after Astra Complete, and this score took so much energy out of me. I was still learning how to become like a really good speed TS player, and I think Skyswitch is definitely a big part of the grind that I needed to actually like pass through most of those like lower scores to the point where I was becoming like a really good speed TS player, and I was getting into the motions of it at this point. At the time, ending with world record on this scenario it was very satisfying after such a long grind on the Voltaic benchmarks. So when I first went for Divinity in Reflex Season 2 benchmarks, when I was motivated by Guerio when he said to do it, I think the best score that I hit in that big speed run of the benchmarks that I did was definitely this wide flick score. This was within 2 tries, and I insta-sniped the world record on it. I know I freaking annoyed a couple of people with it, like RA Hart, and at the time RA Dark, who were both like very well-known speed TS players. The RA Season 2 conquests back when I did it is definitely still one of my best run-throughs of a benchmark that has ever been done. So star clicking was one of the first world records that I hit when I started my run-through of the Aim Beast benchmarks. Scenarios like this one have like a lot of funny AIM community context to them, like people who play Aim Beast fall into a pit of despair and agony, people who play Aim Beast go crazy like MBM. Star clicking is definitely like one of the hardest scenarios that I've played in terms of dynamic clicking, because you have to use the MBM method here, and that's how it is with pretty much all dynamic clicking in Aim Beast. So all those jokes about aimers going crazy over scenarios like this, it definitely applies. And if you haven't tried Aim Beast or tried any of these scenarios, you definitely should give it a try, because you will definitely fall into despair playing these. Alright, so here it is. VT Bounshot Advance 1280. This is the stupidest score that I've ever hit in my entire career in aim training. This run was so good, it gapped the second place by like 20 hits it was at the time. When I played this, I didn't realize how good my pacing was until about 15 seconds into the run, and it was around that time that I would start like choking it and just completely whiffing my technique, missing a bunch of targets, and then the run would be dead. But that just didn't happen. Like, all of the spawns were exactly where they needed to be, and my crosshair, you'll see at some points in this run, like, my crosshair is right underneath a falling bot most of the time, and I don't even need to move it sometimes. So once I got into that rhythm, somehow the rhythm just did not break, and I got this insane score that you would not see on this scenario normally. For a while, actually for a long time, this score was considered, I think, one of those untouchable scores that not even the person who got it would realistically have another chance at beating it. Obviously soon I'm going to try and beat the score again and get 1300, but right now this one stands as one of the most insane scores that has ever been hit in aim training. Alright, this is Celestial complete, the final VOD that I needed to get Celestial on each of the scenarios in the Season 4 Kovac benchmarks for Voltaic. Obviously, I could not have let this one out. This was such a long grind for such a big achievement. It's crazy to think that I hit this on stream with a good chunk of the big players in the AIM community watching. I still hold Celestial complete, and it's also crazy to think that people back when I first hit it, they didn't think it was possible. A lot of people thought that Celestial complete was entirely just out of question, impossible, and that no one would ever be able to hit it. Passu Voltaic 135, the world record, is one that I didn't really think was one of my craziest scores, but a lot of people in the game community think that it is. Passu Voltaic is pretty difficult just because of the accuracy scoring, but it really is like a truly valuable Passu scenario, and being part of the Season 3 benchmarks, it was fitting that I put this in here. This was around the time like after I had gotten Celestial complete, and aim training was entering a kind of lull point where there wasn't really anything going on, and it was pretty much just me trying to farm as many scores as I could get. And this was also like where I truly started to implement like static technique in dynamic clicking scenarios like Passu. You can see how my distinct technique and speed started to develop in this VOD specifically. So this VOD, the original Bounce 180 world record, is pretty important because this was around the time that I was preparing to study Snowy's technique and try to implement it into my own runs. Obviously, my way of using static technique in dynamic clicking isn't going to work everywhere because it's inherently not smooth, and the fast flicking motions that I have to perform usually obscure my peripheral vision. You can check out my video on Snowy technique to learn more about why it's good to perform here in Bounce 180. This score is kind of surprising to me because I didn't think that I was on pace to actually beat Snowy here, but obviously my accuracy is like lower. But I guess my speed from implementing static technique definitely helped me here. So here it is, the Red Bull Ready Check, my crowning achievement in aim training. And I think the best example of it is this run here, Bounce Click. This was pretty early in Aim Lab Season 1. This was the first scenario I tried when the practice tasks for the Red Bull Ready Check qualifiers were released. As soon as I hit the score, I realized that this was such a well-timed opportunity that I had to take. Up to this point, I had not won any of the original Aim Lab tournaments, so I figured that this was the time to finally win my tournament and make my mark on the aim training with the first ever LAN event. This scenario kicked off the hardest grind that I ever went on in my entire aim training career. Strafe Track 3.2 was a world record that I got in preparing for the Red Bull Ready Check. Kind of similar to Bounshot, 3.2 is almost an untouchable score. I don't really want to say it is, but it was considered on the edge of possibility by even some really good tracking players at the time. Obviously right now it's definitely surpassable, and even 3.3 is now on the edge of possibility, but I'm still pretty proud of this score. And it's definitely the best score that I have out of the RA Season 2 benchmarks, besides maybe Jump Click, 3D Click. So this is Popcornvoltaic 620 world record. And obviously there's not a lot to say about this. Popcorn 600 is one of those far off goals that I set for myself way back when I hit 530. Obviously it's been the longest grind to get to this point, and all of the good components of dynamic clicking come together here in this one run to make it absolutely perfect. I think the highlight of this run is just my timing and just my ability to read targets in Arc Dynamic nowadays. I also have like pretty good choosing of targets. Like my target prio is singling out targets that are falling. It's all the great things that you might say about a top bounce dynamic run. Obviously, Popcornvoltaic 700, it's so far out there on the edge of possibility, but do we think we can do it? Obviously 500 wasn't impossible, and 600 is now shown it's not impossible. So maybe far out down there I can get 700. So this is Angelic, and I often say that this scenario specifically is one of the best scenarios, tracking scenarios in Kovacs, if not the best. If it's not the best overall, then it definitely is for specifically Overwatch training, which is why players like Sestroid, the best Soldier 76 player in the world, often uses it to grind. Angelic and its many variants teach you so many things about good tracking aim, like movement reading, under aiming. There's so much you can learn just by playing this one variant in Kovacs. And I think that finally brings us to the present. This is the Kovacs League Season 8 4th week scenario, 1-1-4 targets clean. I think some of my best static technique is showcased in this one run. Obviously I was really motivated to win this Kovacs League because I had lost the first 2 previous times that I tried back in 2022, mostly due to a bad setup. So this is a good redemption run of the Kovacs League here at the end of the year, so finally I get to win my own season. So this has been a showcase of all the aim training runs that I think many players can learn from, and just some of the best runs that I'm the most proud of throughout my career. This is only part 1 to the 10K special, and I have something else a lot larger planned for part 2, but it will take a lot more time, and I think that I want to get this out there just to celebrate 10K subscribers while I can. And once again, thank you guys so much for 10K subscribers. Let's keep the growth of aim training going strong. And you guys can catch me at twitch.tv/MattyOW for aim training VOD reviews, Overwatch, and any other things that I would like to stream. As always, happy dot clicking, and I'll see you guys in the next video.